Hello, pinball nerds. Well, I was hoping to get a little bit farther along for this next episode, but putting this back together is taking a bit longer than I expected. But I got some good info and some downfalls, but we're getting through it. And so this video is an update of the progress of putting the pinball table back together. And hopefully when the rest of the parts come in, we'll be able to finish it up and hook it up and test it out. All right, so watch this next episode, and if you like this stuff, please subscribe and add some comments if you got some suggestions, because I'm learning too. All right, check it out. Okay, so one of the steps of putting things back together is to clean the contacts, right? We got a lot of switches and relays and stuff. Like here's a switch, and it has two contacts which touch together, and it's supposed to make an electrical connection. However, over the age, oxidation builds up on it, and it adds some resistance, and it often will prevent it from making a good connection. So as we're putting this stuff together, we take a little bit of sandpaper. This is 800 grit, and we run it through the contact. So this right here I think is a tilt sensor, and it has a little contact right here and here. So I put the sandpaper in between it, sort of push it closed, and I rub it through just to get rid of the oxidization. You can see there's some stuff still coming through. Now this is the kind of thing where I don't know if contact cleaner would do this, but you definitely don't want to use any oils. This is really a dry system. You only use grease and stuff on gears. You don't use it on solenoids. You don't use it on switches. Don't use WD-40 and all that. Just keep it dry. Okay, so that should be good for that contact. And let's see if I can just do this. You should just run it through a couple times. Will help with the contact. You can kind of see that it's not so much a rust color, that it's a little shinier. I think these are tungsten. I'm not sure. I gotta check to see. Can you see how shiny that is now compared to the other side? Okay, so this is another step that has to be done as we're putting the pieces back together. All right, update on the assembly. The harness starts here, goes up there. There's the lights I hooked up. It splits off and goes to the gate. So I put that in, and then this right here and this right here are a couple of the pop-up bumpers, so I'll put those in place. The ground lines, I'm not sure where they're supposed to connect to. I think maybe the lamp inside the pop-up bumper, so I gotta check that out. So I got some switches and some lights screwed in. So this is where I'm at right now. Still doing the other two pop-up bumpers, and then I got the big area with the bonus and all the relays. So it's coming along. All right. I wanted to talk about something I discovered when I was putting this back together. Remember how I said it's always concerning when you find little parts left over when you're moving your harness around? Well, figured out what the parts are. These are spacers for leaf switches. A leaf switch is like a piece of metal, a little flat piece of metal. Like here's a leaf switch here. This one is a always closed, and when something comes and hits this, like an end of stroke switch, it opens up and becomes an open circuit, so it knows that the that the solenoid's all the way there, or this could be for a button that is pushed on the field. And what it has is these leaf bits of metal are separated by these little spacers here. And then it's got some bolts going through, screwed down. Some of them are screwed into the wood, into the table. And so we have different pieces here. Some of these are metal. Some of these are fiber, like this one, and it's insulated. The whole idea is there needs to be some insulation between these so that it doesn't have a contact, an electrical contact. So you have to have an insulation. And then the metal is for making it durable so it can be tightened down. But here's the thing is this screw, which goes through to tighten it all down, it's also metal. And so what is keeping this metal from creating the contact between the two? Well, let's open this up and we'll find out. Okay. Where's that? There it is. Okay. I want to keep these separated. Don't want to lose them and get them mixed up. Okay, so there's the support bracket, and we'll take this screw out. So the top one is metal. Top one is metal, and the next one is insulated. And look, it's got little notches out of it. I think that's so it can expand. And this one happens to be all stuck together, which is rare. I've been finding them all apart. Okay, but what you should be able to see here is that there are these little tubes going through this to keep this metal screws from contacting the switches, these things, and creating a closed circuit. So you got to have these little metal tubes, or these little insulated tubes, I guess they're plastic, on the inside to protect it from the screws. All right. So I have here lots of metal pieces and a couple of insulators, and then there's that spacer one for dealing with the compression of the screws. But I don't have the plastic tubes. I remember one of them. I remember when I was moving things around and I saw something. I said, "Oh, this looks like a Jones connector," but actually, it was one of those things with the plastic tubes. So I couldn't find it. I needed one for a couple of the switches up there, so I had to order some special ones. I got a lot of extras here, and I'm kind of concerned about, what they're used for. And I'm looking at this one, going, what's that for? And I think it's there's a couple of these switches that have one of those pieces of metal, and it's used to keep the one of the leaf switches from touching, right? This little piece of metal in here, it's providing a little tension so it doesn't automatically stick and close. So those are leaf switches, and I had to order some parts to get this finished and put back together. So that's kind of where I'm at now, but I'm going to keep putting the rest of the stuff in, and then when those parts come in, we'll finish the leaf switches. So another update, we've put pretty much all of the parts in on the bottom side. There's a couple of things that we still got to do. I'm waiting for the leaf switch parts to come in so I can finish this leaf switch. And I believe this is for this button right there. Yep, there's a connection right there. I still have to go through and solder some of the ground lines. I've decided that soldering on a sideways is not good because the solder drips down. It doesn't really establish a good contact. So as soon as I can lay the table flat, and I can solder those pieces in. Let's see. Down here, I'm at the part where I'm doing the kick out for the ball, the trough, and so it's part on the inside and part on the outside. So I'm gonna have to flip the table over and do that in this part here, up there. So I'm at that point where I'm gonna start flipping over and start putting the other parts in. So it's coming along. Looks like I don't have to get a big bed to hide this underneath. Looks like I'll actually be able to get it done. All right. So when working on pinball machines, you'll always have to do some kind of maintenance and occasional replacement of parts because things get old and they break. This is one of the flippers. The other flipper cracked. Let's see if I got it here. Okay, here's the other flipper. You can see it cracked. I think maybe the rubber sort of gave up and the ball was hitting the flipper. See, the ball travels along. Okay, that's a ball. And so these flippers, when they are coming out of the table, they need to be very flush to the table. Otherwise, if they're up a little bit, this ball is going to hit the plastic and break, just like this. So, that's why you got to make sure you pay attention to the rubbers. And so if they start wearing out, you replace them as soon as you can. And when you install these things, you got to make sure that you get them nice and flat. So these are the replacements. So they have the word flipper on them. These are what are called zipper flippers. They're kind of hard to find. The only place that I know of is a place called Pinball Resource. They have all sorts of drop targets and plastics and things that you can't find anywhere else. And they're also pretty cool. Actually, this is from Marco's. You can get rubber kits, but if you go to Pinball Resource and Marco's and you just say, hey, I got this kind of machine and I need some replacement rubbers or I need some flippers or something, they'll look it up and make sure it's right. And so I think this is the old rubber for the flipper, for the other flipper. All right, so when that's sitting on the ground, see, that ball's going to hit it nice and not get near the plastic. All right, so here we got 2 new flippers, and we'll put those in the machine and keep working. Okay, let's talk about parts getting old and rusty. So you see this is a pop bumper. The ball hits this little skirt at the bottom, and then this metal bar comes down and knocks the ball away from it and knocks it out. So you see the metal part here, it's all kind of dirty and rusty, and so the legs. And what happens is, when the ball, which is metal, hits rubber and bounces around, it's fine. But when it hits metal, it has a chance of putting little divots and things and stuff in it. But what really also messes it up is the rust. The rust gets on it and makes it kind of abrasive. And so when you have rusty metal parts hitting the ball, it really starts wearing away at the ball. So what is rust? Well, rust is oxidization on metal, and it just happens naturally from just being out in the oxygen atmosphere, you know. But it's pretty easy to take care of. You know, you can make metal so it's all sealed up so the oxygen doesn't cling to it. You know, chrome plating and that sort of thing. But just steel can get rust on it pretty easily. But all you got to do is just put a little sandpaper to it. I just clean this up with some sandpaper. It's 800 grit sandpaper, the same stuff that I used to smooth out the clear coat on the table, and you can see it's really nice and shiny and sparkly. I also did the posts here, and so when you have the Playfield apart and you're taking these pieces of metal apart, it's a good time to just hit it with some sandpaper and clean it up. I don't think it'd be worth the time to and do any kind of chrome plating unless it's something large like the legs or something that really stands out. This stuff you hit it with some sandpaper and you know, should be good for about 10 years or so, unless you live in a high salt environment or, you know, that sort of thing, and you don't keep your balls clean and rust free. So that's one of the things I'm doing, just cleaning up the parts as I put them back together. Here I am, got most of the parts together. I've been putting the ball return and the kick out back together. Let's see here. All right, so this is the skirt where the ball comes in, does the ball return. This guy knocks the ball up this ramp and it gets put into this part here, and then this little wheel here is used to push the next ball out so it can be hit by the plunger. Okay, another quick video to explain some of these parts I'm putting back together, mostly for posterity and for my memory. This is a rollover button that's in the Playfield. It's a round button. You've probably seen on newer Playfields they have like star rollovers, and they may have some other buttons, but these Bally's have really thin shafts. And then in the Playfield there's a round area that's carved out and has a little hole for this single shaft to go through. So underneath the Playfield, it has this nut that's driven into the wood to hold it in place. It has a washer here that goes like this, so that it you know, it doesn't mess up the wood long term. So you gotta screw this in, and over the top of this, on the underside, is a switch to sense when it's been rolled over. And what happens is this goes through the hole and goes through this to the other side. But then what happens? How do you keep it from falling back out? It has this little spring pin, which you got to push onto this little divot here to hold it in place, so it doesn't fall out the hole. And then it's normally recessed, but when the switch is on it, it sort of pushes it up and keeps it nice and level with the Playfield. All right. So that's what I'm doing now. I got like, I think my Playfield has like 5 or 6 of these, so I got to put those in. So just wanted to let you know. And so in case you find all the pieces in separate bags, you figure out how to put them back together. All right. So putting the table back together, I go through and I clean up everything before sticking it back on the table. You know, like I'll clean the rust off of the metal, and I will clean the contacts and wipe down anything that looks a little dirty. And one of the things I wanted to wipe down was the pop-up bumpers. Here's a little red 10, and you got to be careful what you use to clean this with. I use the same cleaner that I used on the Playfield, which I tested it out, but the paint on this is a little different. And when I use my Pro Cleaner, Look at what happened. It sure cleaned it up all right. Cleaned that red paint up pretty well. Some of the gold paint held up. So, two options. Get a hold of Pinball Resource and order some more. Or go the cheap route and paint it myself, which I happen to have some paint. So I'm gonna try the cheap option first, and then if that doesn't work, I can order some new ones from Pinball Resource. I had a red one. I have red ones and yellow ones, and one of the yellow ones also got a little got some of the paint rubbed off. So let's try repainting it. We'll see what happens. Okay, started working on my little experiment of trying to repair the pop bumper caps. This is a red cap with gold 100 points when lit, and so this is the one that was okay. And I started I taped up a couple of these and started painting. So these two were taped, and so was that. And then these last two were freehand, just to see how it looked. And comparing them, it's pretty good where I did a lot of the taping. Where I freehanded it, not so good. But really, once you get it all the way around, it's not going to look as nice and clean and consistent as this. I'd have to spend a lot of time and a lot of tape and a lot of practice to get it right. So, or I could go on to Pinball Resource and get the 100 points when lit in red for $6 each. So, do I spend several hours taping this up and painting it and repainting it till I'm happy with it? Or do I spend $12 and just get a couple more tops? Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. Going to order some more tops. And God bless Pinball Resource.